Hello, families. This week on Community Chat, Hagen Nares PLC track record and brain injury lawyers is speaking with KC Harpring, owner and partner of Dormer Harpring. We are going to discuss KC's amazing success on some complicated premise liability cases. But first, let's talk about his journey in starting his law firm, what it's like to be a client of his, and a recap of what a premise case even is, and how he has had such good success in litigating them. Welcome, KC. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I am very excited to have KC here. So he's my go-to whenever someone calls about a premise liability case. And we're going to go into what is a premise liability case. But first, let's talk about the start of his law firm and how he even came to start doing these types of cases. He has a really great story, and we definitely want to learn because a lot of people listening today are small entrepreneurs, small law firm owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs of those types. And so we love hearing about the journey of how you got here, and it gives you that credibility that we really know that you know your stuff. So I really appreciate you being here, and let's talk about your journey. How did you even decide to start a law firm?
Well, first it was kind of by necessity more than anything, but I worked at a law firm in Colorado that kind of saw itself as one of those billboard personal injury firms. They weren't, but that's how everything was run. And so there was a lot of, typically those places have super high volume. Every attorney there's got, hundreds of cases. They don't really know their clients because they don't have time to talk. It's just physically impossible to talk to them. Heavily reliant on their staff to actually do the work until cases got kind of to the end of litigation. As soon as I started there, I suspected problems because I would call up some of my clients and they'd say, "Oh, so you're the new lawyer, you're my fourth lawyer I've had in my case." And I was just like, okay, I was a baby lawyer. I didn't know anything about this industry. But that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, you could tell that they didn't think I was long for this world being their lawyer either. And, I could talk on and on about my experience at that law firm, but more or less, it was kind of run by, somebody who's a bit of a dictator, didn't treat the people who work there very well, had a lot of bad habits. And so I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to get out of there. But I loved the work, like working for real people on a day-to-day basis was very satisfying. I don't think I could do any other kind of law. And so I knew I wanted to stay in the industry. And it was only 9 months until I got fired over basically, I would say, an ethical dispute over whether or not we should be pursuing a case that a client didn't even want us to pursue. It was more like a lawyer versus lawyer vendetta kind of thing. Just egos clashing, for nobody's benefit. And I didn't want to be a part of it. And I spoke up about that and then was shown the door. So that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because then I went out and met my now law partner, who had also worked at this firm before I had been there, had a very similar experience. Got kicked out for a very similar complaint. He had complained about them not preparing well enough for a trial, and that didn't go over very well. So he got canned and had started his own firm. And he was looking for help to just work on, not be alone and work on cases. So Sean Dormer contracted me to work with him. And within 3.5 months, we decided to partner up. It's funny, I brought $15,000 to the partnership, and that's what he had too. And then we had to try a case within about 40 days of becoming partners that the costs on that case were $43,000. So it was kind of like, hey, we got to win this trial or we go bankrupt, and we'd start over. And we won that trial. And then we won another one like 2 months later. And the rest is kind of history. The story since then was, for a while, we were just kind of two guys in a room trying to try cases, be trial lawyers. And that was fun and a lot of work. But it wasn't good business, and it wasn't very stable, because income would come in sometimes, but we'd have long stretches of nothing. And that was really stressful. So, we basically wanted to grow the firm to give us a couple things. One, just to be more financially stable so that we have more work spread out, more income spread out over a longer, a smoother period, if you will. And then also just to have more people so that we could have be able to concentrate on trying cases without having to kind of set everything aside for 2 to 3 weeks and let things languish while we're working, 100% all in on these cases. Because that's just like, I mean, it's doable in a very, very small caseload, but it's really hard to run a business successfully and to give all of your clients equal attention if you don't kind of have more help. So that's why we've kind of grown the firm to where we are now, and we're still trying cases. I just finished one 2 weeks ago, and we're going to trial again on Monday. We've got another trial 20 days from now as well. So basically, we'll have 3 trials in like 6 weeks, which is kind of crazy in our industry, but that's kind of our brand, and we're enjoying it. And as we get better cases, we get better results, we get more experience, and it's fun. So that's kind of where we are. And still to this day, I kind of look at our experience at that other law firm, and I basically try to run our law firm exactly the opposite of everything that happened there, and that's been a pretty good guide. So
I think that's fantastic. And I love your honesty because it really shows how you have decided to intentionally run a law firm where you do quality work. And also, you're a natural entrepreneur, which I'm going to say to everybody. Probably 99% of trial lawyers out there are not entrepreneurs. They are doing what you were exactly saying. They're going from trial to trial. Everything gets put on the back burner in between those times. And sometimes they run out of money, which is not a good thing because one of the most important things is being able to fund a case and get the best experts needed. So having that entrepreneurial mindset has been really great in your success in building a team for the long term. And that's where I want to get to the second question, which is what is it like to be a client? Obviously, we know your backstory. We know that kind of ethics and doing great quality work was the back reason why you started this firm in the first place. But what is it like to walk through the doors of your office in the Rhino area? What is it like to be a client of yours from start to finish?
So I'll say, first of all, almost no one ever comes into our office anymore. Since COVID, it's extremely rare for people to come in person to our office, but people are always welcome to do. We always have somebody at the front desk, and I'm typically there. A lot of our team works remotely, but I live just a few minutes from the office, and I'm generally more productive there. I'm not there this morning because it's too noisy, and I wanted to, be somewhere quiet for this. But it's a nice little space, right near the sort of the Blue Moon Brewery or the Pepsi factory or the Coliseum, if you know where it is. So I like to say we're kind of it's not a very nice way to put it. We're kind of in the armpit of the southeast corner of 70 and 25, but easy access to the highway. So what's it like to be one of our clients? I'll put it this way. Since we kind of started treating the firm more as a business, I have had where previously when it was just me and Sean and we're doing the intakes, we're doing all the paralegal work, all the, everything, we were not doing a very good job of anything except litigating and trying cases because that's what we love to do. And that's what kind of inspired us. We didn't really know how to be our own paralegals. We would get a lot of complaints back then of like, hey, I haven't heard from you guys, what's going on? And we just weren't good at that part of it. But since we started treating the firm as a business probably about 5 years ago now, I've probably only had 1 or 2 instances of people saying, hey, I don't know what's going on in my case. And those have resulted in people getting fired. It is a really serious thing in our firm. We had a client fire us about a year ago, and I said, this does not happen at our firm anymore. This should never happen. Everybody should be up to speed in their cases. And that ended up, like I said, resulting in somebody getting fired. And then we realized that was a really good choice because once we kind of got under the hood, it was obvious that there wasn't a lot of stuff getting done. So since then, for us, the biggest thing is just, and I presented to the CTLA boot camp recently on this to the young lawyers about how to show your clients you care. I mean, it's not that complicated. You just have to tell them what's going on because that's what they want to know. They hire you because they are not lawyers. They don't know the intricacies of litigation and all these things. So as long as you keep them up to speed on what's going on, big thing for us is always analyzing their risk tolerance because I'm crazy and so is my law partner and so are all the other trial lawyers at our office. That's why we're trial lawyers, because we have a skewed sense of risk reward that is not manageable for your normal everyday person. And so I always want to make sure that we're taking the client's risk tolerance and putting it into the case, because otherwise, we would go and try every single case. There would never be a result good enough. Keep them up to speed and just show that we care about them. And the way that we do that really is by keeping a lower caseload so that they get to spend time talking to their attorneys on a regular basis. They know their staff, the paralegals, very well. We had a photo shoot last week and flew out one of our remote paralegals, and she had lunches 2 days in a row with former clients that aren't even our clients anymore because they liked working with her so much, and she went out of her way to go and visit with them. Generally with us, I would say the other big thing for clients is results. Like, just statistically, our average fee is really high compared to other firms that are willing to publish those results. Usually like 3 times as much. I know there's a commercial on NPR of a local lawyer, the guy who's like, "What's your case worth?" And he talks about how, you can triple your recovery if you hire a lawyer. And I'm like, well, maybe if you hire the right lawyer, you might be able to triple that again with a firm like ours. So for us, at the end of the day, every way we have designed the business is for the clients. Like, smaller cases means a better result. That's good for us, but it's good for every client. They get one case, they get one shot. It's good communication, because if they're happy, that's what we're in business for, is to get a good result for them. So I want them to be happy. I want them to know what's going on. I want them to be active. Having an active client also means you know what's going on in their case, so you can get the evidence that you need. You can find the witnesses that you would never get at a firm like the one I used to work at, because you just didn't know your clients. You didn't spend any time with them. They didn't trust you to call their friends or their coworkers. And everything we do at the firm is designed with their satisfaction in mind, because we're in the service industry. Who do we serve? Our clients. So for me, if I get a client complaint, like, that is like emergency, red alert seriousness, and I'm investigating and finding out what went wrong, how we can change it. We'll have meetings over it. Like, even one bad review, I'm like, how did this happen? Like, let's, rather than trying to, you see a lot of businesses like blame the person who left the review first and kind of be like, oh, you just are crazy or whatever. The approach I take is, why did they have a bad experience? Because that's on us. And then I go and try to figure it out. Maybe I feel like those reviews are unfair sometimes, but they're very rare. And most of the time we learn something and improve things. So for me, that's what it's all about. Like, the clients are everything. And at that other firm I worked at, it was money. That was it. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's money for the clients, because that's what we're in business to do. And if you do that, it results in better results for yourself.
I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate just brutal honesty and kind of how you've set up your law firm. And you've gotten some fantastic results that you've mentioned. So obviously people hear me talking about truck wreck cases and brain injury cases. That's what I specialize in. I haven't talked too much about liability cases. So that's why I brought my friend KC here to talk to us about this. Tell me a little bit about premise liability cases. There's a lot that can fit under that hood. It's obviously, you can talk about dog bite cases, you can talk about slip and falls on ice, trip and falls, there's so many. But I'd love for you to give a general overview and then talk about, maybe just a few facts about a case you had recently and how you're able to get great results.
Sure. So premises does encompass a huge swath of types of cases. And a lot of times I forget that regular folks, when I say premises liability, they're like, what does that mean? In Colorado, it is there's a statute called the Premises Liability Act. It's actually called the Actions Against Landowner Act, I think of 1976 or something. It's been amended several times. We commonly refer to it as the Premises Liability Act, or PLA. It encompasses everything from a slip and fall on, a blueberry in a grocery store, a real case we had, to, you're walking up the stairs of your apartment and they collapse. Real case we've had. Negligent security also falls into that. So there have been a few high profile cases of, folks getting in like an argument with a bouncer and then getting the crap beat out of them, or for no reason at all. Things like that. Shootings we've had can be premises cases if it's negligent. I've had really a super wide range of stuff. The most common ones are generally like trip and falls, or what I would call like tripping hazard cases, because that's really what they're about. Um, and slip and falls. Slip and falls are very common here in Colorado. A lot of times it can be really nobody's fault in a way, depending on the circumstances. But a lot of times it's also just bad maintenance, bad management. And we're happy to help on those cases, because at the end of the day, holding companies accountable for these things makes it safer, so that this doesn't happen to like your grandma or to a toddler or to somebody carrying a bunch of groceries in, who like, it makes a safer environment for everybody. So it really is important. Um, let's see. So I'm trying to remember the rest of your question. So a typical, I'll say a little bit about like how we got into this. We got into premises cases really because nobody was taking them. One of my favorite shows, Better Call Saul, like if you remember from the first season, he's slipping Jimmy, and that's kind of the way the public typically views these cases, until you really get into it and explain how these things happened and what kind of rules and policies have been violated that create dangerous conditions. Our first big trial was a premises case against King Soopers. It was really scary. I was supposed to try it with my partner, but I broke my leg playing soccer like 2 weeks before trial, and was on a knee scooter and very heavily medicated because it was a surgical broken bone for the trial. And so I had to write out all my stuff and give it to another lawyer at the time who was working with us. And we got a great result in that case. And it just kind of proved like, okay, we can do these cases. And then people started referring these cases to us. So we kind of fell into this accidentally. And then it has turned out to be really great. In general, I feel that premises cases are better than most people think, because causation of the injuries is not usually in dispute. It's pretty hard to have a pre-existing broken leg or a pre-existing, torn muscle or something like that, which are really slip and fall injuries, trip and fall injuries are usually pretty serious.
Yeah.
And regular people understand it. Whereas, you might get like a rear end car crash that doesn't show a lot of property damage, and you've got to go to the ends of the earth to prove that these injuries are related to that. So typically your premises cases are sort of an all or nothing proposition. The other side knows like, okay, if you guys prove that we're at fault for this, you're going to get everything because we can't fight this. And so they generally pay. One recently that we took that that I'm really proud of is a slip and fall for I forget exactly what the gentleman was doing. Our client was like sort of like a delivery person or like a technician who was basically going to a work site, which was a business downtown, like near Union Station, and there was a curb cut for like an underground garage, and so that curb cut creates like a little bit of a slope that slopes off the sidewalk, and there was snow that was falling from like an awning on top of the building, landing on this curb cut and creating like an icy, more or less a black ice ramp, which is about as dangerous as it gets. Icy stairs are one thing, but at least the surface is flat. This was an icy ramp, and it was right where the people who were making deliveries and who were, servicing that building are supposed to enter into this door. And he came out that door and was descending the curb cut, slipped and fell and broke his ankle really badly. This case was turned down by 3 law firms. And then, because they just thought, oh, like it's a slip and fall on ice in Colorado. Then he hired a really good, I would consider a peer, really a model firm that we appreciate. He hired that firm, and they fired him because they were afraid of liability and afraid of litigating the case, which kind of blew my mind. And he called us, was referred to us by that firm actually to have a second look at it. And we took the case, and then he turned out to be one of the best clients we've ever had. And we sold that case for, $750,000 recently. And that's like, that is a lot of the story of our firm, is cases that other law firms thought, this is like hard work. This this isn't perfect, this hasn't been delivered to me on a plate. I'm going to reject that. And then we take those cases, and because we have, less cases, we have more attorney time on all these cases. We get to know our clients well. We can, take, I used to joke we were in the turd polishing business, because that was what it was like when it was just me and Sean, and we were just getting, really tough cases, and we would manage by grit to make these cases valuable for the clients. And now it's like we're like alchemists. We take these cases that are already like good raw materials and then just turn them into something really valuable for the clients, because we have time, which allows us to be creative and just outmaneuver the defense, outwork the defense, because we don't have 1,000 other cases. And that's just something you can't get at like a billboard firm. And a lot of firms like you and ours, who are our peers, don't take these cases either because they're risky, and you usually have to litigate them, meaning file a lawsuit for your listeners. And people don't like to do that because it's harder work, it's expensive. You talked about advanced costs. I gave a presentation to the CBA a couple of years ago called spend money to make money, because that's my approach to this. Is like you really do need to go out and work up the case, hire experts, spend the money, and not be afraid to do it, because that's what adds value to your case. That's what makes you dangerous to the other side, which scares them into paying you the money, so that you don't have to go to trial. Trial is really sort of the last resort for cases that just, the two sides are super, super far apart and will never approach a fair value together. So, that's some of the recent ones. We were going to trial on a premises case in July. So, and that's going to be a very hotly contested one. So we like these cases. They're great. And, it's an important thing. I think about what I'm sure you suffer from the same disease I have, which is like you go to a bar or a brewery and you look at this, it's always the steps, and you're just like, that is so dangerous. Like, I have seen, this and that, like they're too narrow, they're crumbling, there's no railing, all this stuff. And like, I mentioned breaking my leg before that trial. Something I was taught a very valuable lesson in that, because I was on a knee scooter I was on crutches for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And then a knee scooter for like 2 months after, not that quite that long, maybe a month after that. But the first time I tried to leave at the time I was living in like a old Victorian house off of Colfax and like Josephine Street, so kind of uptown. And I couldn't get out of my house because like I would get down the stairs and then go onto those they're beautiful, the flagstone sidewalks in Denver. And I was just like, how do you navigate this world like as somebody who's not like perfectly mobile or able-bodied? And that really taught me an important lesson that now I see in a lot of these premises cases is, there are older buildings that get grandfathered into things, but newer stuff, it's just like not acceptable to not have just basic, things up to code. And those codes are there for a reason, which is safety. And so premises cases are really important to hold people accountable for those rule breaks, I guess you would say, because otherwise they'll just keep being lazy and cutting corners, and people will keep getting hurt. So, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. So Casey's given us really great information about what these cases actually are, and what it takes to litigate them, which is first off, get an attorney. This is not something that you're going to want to do yourself, but also you want an attorney that has the time, the bandwidth, and the expertise to be able to do these. So we're going to include all of Casey's information in the show notes. And this is valuable information to share to anybody. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Casey, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.